To rally herself, she said she was in a mood, and for 2 or 3 seconds, shutting her eyes, told herself that she had imagined the letter. But she opened them. There it lay on the bed. On the supernatural side of the letter's entrance she was not permitting her mind to dwell. Who in London knew she meant to call at the house today? Evidently, however, that had been known. The caretaker, had he come back, had had no cause to expect her. He would have taken the letter in his pocket to forward it at his own time through the post. There was no other sign that the caretaker had been in. But if not? Letters dropped in at doors of deserted houses do not fly or walk to tables and halls. They do not sit in the dust of empty tables with the air of certainty that they will be found. There is needed some human hand. But nobody but the caretaker had a key. Under the circumstances, she did not care to consider a house can be entered without a key. It was possible that she was not alone now. She might be waited for downstairs. Waited for until when? Until the hour arranged? At least it was not 6 o'clock. 6 has struck. She rose from the chair and went over and locked the door. The thing was to get out. To fly? No, not that. She had to catch her train. As a woman whose utter dependability was the keystone of her family life, she was not willing to return to the country, to her husband, her little boys, and her sister without the object she had come to fetch. Resuming her work at the chest, she set about making up a number of parcels in a rapid, fumbling, decisive way. These, with her shopping parcels, would be too much to carry. These meant a taxi. At the thought of a taxi, her heart went up and her normal breathing resumed. I will ring up the taxi. The taxi cannot come too soon. I shall hear the taxi out there running its engine till I walk calmly down to it through the hall. I'll ring up. No, the telephone's cut off. She tugged at a knot she had tied wrong. The idea of flight. Oh, he was never kind to me, not really. I don't remember him kind at all. Mother said he never considered me. He was set on me. That was what it was, not love. Not love, not meaning a person well. What did he do to make me promise like that? I can't remember. But she found she could. She remembered with such dreadful acuteness that the 25 years since then dissolved like smoke, and she instinctively looked for the wheel left by the button on the palm of her hand. She remembered not only all that he said and did, but the complete suspension of her existence during that August week. I was not myself. They all told me so at the time. She remembered, but with one white, burning blank, as where acid has dropped on a photograph. Under no conditions could she remember his face. So wherever he may be waiting, I shall not know him. You have no time to run from a face you do not expect. The thing was to get to the taxi before any clock struck what could be the hour. She would slip down the street and round the side of the square to where the square gave on the main road. She would return in the taxi safe to her own door and bring the solid driver into the house with her to pick up the parcels from room to room. The idea of a taxi driver made her decisive, bold. She unlocked her door, went to the top of the staircase, and listened down. She heard nothing. But while she was hearing nothing, the passé air of the staircase was disturbed by a draught that traveled up to her face. It emanated from the basement, down where a door or window was being opened by someone who chose this moment to leave the house. The rain had stopped. The pavements steamily shone as Mrs. Drover let herself out by inches from her own front door into the empty street. The unoccupied houses opposite continued to meet her look with their damaged stare. Making toward the thoroughfare on the taxi, she tried not to keep looking behind. Indeed, the silence was so intense, one of those creaks of London silence exaggerated this summer by the damage of war, that no tread could have gained on hers unheard. Where her street debouched on the square, where people went on living, she grew conscious of and checked her unnatural pace. Across the open end of the square, two buses impassively passed each other. Women, a perambulator, cyclists, a man wheeling a barrow signalized once again the ordinary flow of life. And at the square's most populous corner should be, and was, the short taxi rank. This evening only one taxi, but this, although it presented its black rump, appeared already to alertly waiting for her. Indeed, without looking round, the driver started his engine as she panted up from behind and put her hand on the door. And as she did so, the clock struck 7. The taxi faced the main road. To make the trip back to her house, it would have to turn. She settled back in one of the seats, and the taxi had turned before she, surprised by its knowing movement, recollected that she had not said where. She leaned forward to scratch at the glass panel that divided the driver's head from her own. The driver braked to what was almost a stop, turned round, and slid the glass panel back. The jolt of this flung Mrs. Drover forward till her face was almost into the glass. Through the aperture, driver and the passenger, not 6 inches between them, remained for an eternity, eye to eye. Mrs. Drover's mouth hung open for some seconds before she could issue her first scream, and after that she continued to scream freely and to beat with her gloved hands on the glass all around as the taxi, accelerating without mercy, made off with her into the hinterland of the deserted streets.